Hello, 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 Tactical Imagination. It is, after many, many weeks, Amy Walsh coming to you with the Imaginauts. Actually, it hasn't really been many weeks. I came on all by myself, but that one's easy to forget because this is all about having guests. So it's been a while since I've been here with a guest. This is our first episode with a guest in the new year, and I'm really, really thrilled about our guest today. And before I introduce her, if any of you are new to me or new to the Imaginauts, this is a mostly weekly live interview show that happens in the Tactical Imagination Club on Tuesdays at 4 o'clock. And I started this show because I knew that there were so many interesting, creative people who were creating really interesting, beautiful brands, some of whom call themselves artists or creatives, and some of whom do not, but are nevertheless creating really interesting brands and projects that have all different kinds of perspectives and relationships to creativity, to the creative process, to building businesses, to using images to communicate ideas. And I wanted to get more of those perspectives and more of those ideas present and visible. And I wanted us to all get to know each other better in the group through highlighting and showcasing each other's work. So that's why I started the Imaginauts. We have about 8 episodes now. You can find the episodes through my website, amywalsh.net. Click on the Imaginauts and find the past episodes. There's been a lot of really good ones, great guests, great interviews. So go check those out. And before I bring Tiffany on, I want to let you know a little bit about how we structure these. Tiffany and I will have a conversation and we'll show a bunch of her images. We are actually over on Crowdcast, which allows us to have really nice screen shares. So you can see all of Tiffany's images as well as seeing both of us. It's being live streamed into Facebook Live. And we will not be able to see your comments and your questions, but Julie, the studio wizard and Imaginauts producer, hello, will be able to see your questions. And she is compiling them in a document for us. So after we've been chatting for 15, 20, 25 minutes, we will look and see what all your questions are and do a big old question and answer period. So please type in your questions, type in your comments, anything you want to know, anything that's coming up out of our conversation. Type them in the comments and we will read them all after we talk for a little while. So go ahead and, insert yourself into the conversation. If you're curious, this thing that's happening behind me is an installation that I did recently for a client for Lacey Sites. It's, I don't know how many, maybe a couple hundred light bulbs now clinking and clanking behind me. That was an accident. And some little globes with candles lit. I don't know if you can see this. And it's part of an installation for a photo shoot with my Red Carpet Rebellion program, in which clients can come and, after working with me through a 6-week process to uncover their own visual story for their own work and their ideas, their own business, I and sometimes a team of people will build out that visual world in the form of a large sculptural installation, which becomes a photo shoot set. And I collaborate with an incredible photographer, Stephanie Evans, and we bring you out for a big photo shoot in the world of your work. And so part of what you're seeing here is part of the world of Lacey Sites' work right now. So without further ado, let's bring Tiffany on. Tiffany is someone that I've worked with in various capacities over the last couple of years. We've become friends through building our businesses online. We've never met in person, but we live about an hour away in the car from each other. That's ridiculous, Tiffany. We should meet. And I brought Tiffany on because in her work as a Feldenkrais instructor, and she'll talk about what that is, authentic movement instructor, and really a cultural producer in the body work and movement arts kind of worlds. She runs her business very much like an artist. And she approaches her visual branding in this very direct, spontaneous, fun way and simple way that's also very effective. So I wanted her to talk some about that and a bunch of other things. So let's bring Tiffany on. Okay, Tiffany, she should be in here in a moment. Accepted and connecting. There she is. Hey! Hi, Tiffany. This is the part where we have canned applause usually, but my applause machine is at home. It's so sad. So welcome. And can you tell us more? Because I just ended my little intro with a bunch of other things because I realized I wanted you to talk about you, not me to talk about you.
Yeah.
And I'll put you on full screen because everybody, Tiffany just moved into her new attic studio, which you had been working on building and renovating for a while, right?
Yeah. Exciting.
So tell us about your space and tell us about your work and all the different things you're doing right now.
Sure. So as Amy mentioned, I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner or instructor. I guess I use the word practitioner because also I do hands-on work with people. But the Feldenkrais method was created by a man, Moshe Feldenkrais. That's the name. There's no T at the end. He was an Israeli physicist and martial artist, and he died in 1984 when I was 6 years old. So I've never met him, but I stumbled upon his work when I was 24 and ended up in a training program. And now I do this for a living, but it's totally changed my life. And it's not an easy thing to sum up in one sentence, but I'll say a little bit about it. So
you can use as many sentences as you like.
Okay. So it's, I got into Feldenkrais because I was looking for a way to have a more loving relationship with my body. I grew up overweight as a kid and was always looking for some kind of way to support myself psychologically with all of my stuff. And I never thought about going through the body. It's like, I don't know why that never occurred to me. I mean, sure, like I would try to exercise or try to do yoga or whatever, but I just felt like everything that related to my body was a struggle. And I had one hands-on session with this woman, and she barely moved me at all in my level of perception. And afterwards I felt beautiful, which I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt like my hip joints had been oiled and was walking down the street differently. And I was like, what is this? And so I went to a bookstore, pulled open this book by Moshe Feldenkrais called Awareness Through Movement. And the first sentence is, we act in accordance with our self-image. And so that was super radical for me because I'd actually never thought about a self-image. I'd thought about body image. And so to shift it from body to self was like really interesting to me. And that we could change our self-image through awareness and movement. And I was like, what is this? And so
That's what I'm doing right now. Like, really?
What's that?
That's what I'm doing right now, listening to you talk. You can change your self-image through movement. Yeah. That's a radical idea.
Yeah. And that's
anyway, keep going.
So his wife was a pediatrician, so he studied a lot of developmental movement and developmental process. And when we come into the world, movement is our language, and we get to know the world through our eyes, through our mouth, through our hands, through connection with other bodies. And at some point, that learning process, that grows our brain through movement and being curious, like at some point our learning shifts from that more organic process to we go to school and there's like a kind of, we're more looking for outside approval to match up with what we're learning and what our interests are versus just following our interests and our curiosity. So that was like a roundabout way of getting back to there's a lot of principles in the work that that I could dive into at different points. But at the heart of it, most people come to me because they have some kind of pain. That wasn't how I got into the work. Although I did have pain, but I just didn't assume that anything could help me with it. I was like, oh yeah, like I have this neck. Everybody has neck and shoulder and arm pain from using the computer, right? Like I didn't know that you could not have that. But that wasn't my reason for getting into it. But a lot of people, that's how they get into it. And then they end up staying because it changes their life in other ways that they didn't expect. So, so I teach classes, group classes and online classes, and also do hands-on work with people.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Feldenkrais part.
And Feldenkrais is part of it, but you do you pursue other interests and inquiries too. So could you
So
lay some of those
Feldenkrais
things out?
got me moving and like being a person who actually had a body that could move. And so then I got into like exercise became pleasurable, or, you know, dance and other things that I weren't accessible to me before. All of a sudden I could do things that I didn't know I could do before. And I stumbled upon a practice called authentic movement, which is more of an open space for allowing your body, yourself as body, to follow your impulses. And it's comes from the dance therapy world, but it's also influenced by Carl Jung's work with active imagination. So allowing some kind of unconscious, connecting with your unconscious through some kind of creative process. And I was an artist before all this. So this, like all of a sudden, this open space to move without being externally guided was this really wonderful kind of full circle from Feldenkrais into looping back into creative process.
Mm-hmm.
So I do that as well, and teach group classes in person, and then I've been playing with bringing some authentic movement online as well. Looks a little different that way, but yeah.
And like I said in the intro, one of the reasons I was excited to bring you here. Oh, and maybe you could turn your volume down a little, because I'm hearing myself feeding back through your mic.
Okay, sure.
But enough so you can still hear me, obviously.
You know what let's see if that helps. Does that help?
Let's see. It does. I can hear myself a tiny bit, but it's a lot better.
How to do that from this program? I don't know.
That's much better. That's fine. So I was excited to bring you on because I can still see, you know, how much of an artist you are, like how your creative process and how like a very playful creative process informs like how you're building your business, how you're building your programs, how you communicate about your programs. And I want to kind of segue towards showing people some of your drawings and some of the artwork that you made. Unfortunately, the book that I just went to get was not where it was supposed to be. So we can talk about it, but I won't be able to show that right now. Although maybe we'll do another little live. Oh, good. So let's start a screen share here. I'm going to take you off full screen. We'll start a screen share, and I will start to show people some images. And let's see. I'm not much of a multitasker, so I'm going to have to just do it. Okay. So go into full screen. So I love, as I have said in my promo stuff, I love your work. I love Tiffany's work, everybody, because most of it is like a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper and really direct, simple lines that have a lot of energy, but do not give you this feeling like you have to go get like a triple PhD in visual art to be able to do it. Like it feels so direct. And when I look at your work, I can feel that it must be related. I know it is related to what you're learning and what you know about the relationship of the body or like creativity and play in your body. And creativity and play in your hand and your eye and your pencil. And so I would love for you to talk about the different kinds of art you make. We forgot to delete this tiny one, but everyone, if you put your microscope up to the screen, you can see it. If you could talk a little bit about the kind of different types of visual work you apply to your business and how it comes out of you. Like, you know, how do you, when you sit down to make drawings to communicate an idea, and the photographic work is something a little different, is it possible for you to describe how you conceive of an idea and bring it into being?
Well, I think there's a few different things. So there's like the conceiving of the idea, bringing it into being, and then the not even having an idea necessarily, or not having a clear idea of where it's going, but just like starting somewhere. And I think I go back and forth between those two ways, but I think the way that I tend to work the most is it just is a way of starting. I just start somewhere and then it goes from there. And each of these images probably has their own different story. So like this image right here, if you go back, yeah. So this is inspired by the Feldenkrais lesson to this coming from sitting in a chair to standing and the process that we go through to get there. And so I think I use images as a way a lot to integrate my learning. So what I'm experiencing in life is like a way for me to digest it. Like this one actually was me observing my kids' Montessori classroom. So I just started with the open space and then just the different things that I observed, I wrote them down and then connected them with these lines. And so it just came out of observing their process. And it just feels like I could have done this in so many different situations where there's these themes that come up. So yeah, I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but I think the thing that is at the heart of my process is just doing it, like just trying something and seeing what happens and then going from there. I think that I really love words and playing with the images that come from just like honoring the beauty of the words. And yeah, there's a kind of a feeling. I have this feeling often like I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying something.
Right.
And then I'm always surprised, like, oh, that was cool. That looks, or if I don't like it, then I, like with this particular image or images kind of like this, where this was like a Feldenkrais series that I was teaching. And I was, actually this particular image I haven't used for anything yet. I was thinking I have a flexible spine, flexible mind Feldenkrais series, and I want to put it on my website as like a downloadable product. And so I was playing with making some images for what that would look like.
Yeah.
But I know that I'll just do, if it doesn't come out exactly how I want it, I'll just like keep doing it in several drafts. And I have a section in this notebook, this like binder that has like my to-do list and stuff that's just called words. And I just have all these pages of just words that I've written that I'll photograph or repurpose for different things at different times. Yeah.
I love it because you just said something which was like, you just start and you kind of see what happens and you just explore. And this strange little line that's coming out of the top of the words and dipping down below it and looping around has that feeling. It's like that quote, I think it was Paul Klee who said a drawing is just a dot that's gone out for a walk. or a line that's going for a walk.
Mm.
Um, so I think that's why I feel like your brand communication is so directly communicative of the work you do, not
Mm.
just in what you're representing, but in the way you represent it. Like,
Mm.
you don't just make images of someone being playful. The line or the image itself is a playful exploration. And
Mhm.
that's something I think, you know, so many of us are trying to figure out, like, how do I let my brand speak to what's most important and what's at the heart of it, not
Mm.
just through the subject matter of my images, but the actual, can the image itself be the voice of the
Mhm.
brand, And
Mhm. Mhm.
that's I think what I experience with your work. When I look at this image, I see the ocean, and it just, evokes this kind of like peaceful, vast, mysterious kind of space. And then I see this interesting little diagram, which just looks like your mind. Like, I can feel you like spinning around that wheel,
Mhm.
putting your ideas around this line. And it doesn't feel like there has been a lot of premeditation or a lot of translation from one thing to another. It just feels very direct, which is in many ways what you're teaching people and learning as you do your authentic movement in Feldenkrais, right?
Mhm.
It's like
Mhm.
how to be really present in the moment with a gesture, with a
Mhm.
movement, right?
Mhm. 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 Yeah, and I think the like thing about movement as a metaphor or creative process as a metaphor, or these things that can translate from one area of your life to another area of your life. I think that as an artist, my mind just does that, or it's
Mm,
like with Feldenkrais, I can't teach it unless I'm practicing it, you know? Like
right.
I actually used to do these series that were more sort of focused on body parts like neck and shoulder ease or whatever, which is great. But then I would, in the process of teaching those series, I would like get neck pain, and it would be
Mm,
like it was like a way of my system uh, learning about what I'm teaching about. So then I
right.
realized, oh, if I want to just not focus on the body parts, which they're all connected anyway, and that's how Feldenkrais teaches you that if you have neck pain, it's not about your neck, it's about how you're using your pelvis and your breath and your eyes and your
Mm,
attention and all that. So then this last round of classes, or for a few rounds, I've called it exploring ease. And then
mm,
that way I'm actually being called to explore ease in the process of exploring ease, so
right.
then
Right.
I confront my over efforting in the marketing, or confront my over efforting in the image making, so the whole thing loops around to remind me, oh, is there a way that I can make this easier? And
Mm,
that enters into the creative process, into the teaching, into the planning, into the, so yeah, I feel like
okay.
we're talking.
So that just makes me want to jump into like a whole bunch of other conversations, which we are going to. I'm really excited by that. So I've bookmarked that. But first, I want to show people your website. Movement. Oh, wait, here's the Movement and Creativity Library. Let me get to your website, because your website shows, we've showed some of the images here, but your website really shows how you then translate all these images and this way of thinking and this way of drawing and writing words into a brand. So let's get this big here. We'll make this full screen. There we go. So this is Movement and Creativity, your website. And you could see a little bit in the images that we showed everybody that there's a combination of drawing and three-dimensional images. And the website is really where it comes together. So you see the hand-drawn letters up here, the very kind of sensual three-dimensional images of bodies moving, and then more of the hand-drawn kind of writing. So Tiffany, do you want to talk about like the process of how you made the website and did these decisions just kind of naturally happen to combine all these things? Was it a similar like process of play that helped you design this
Yeah,
website?
it was a long process. It's gone through different iterations. So that's like, I think at some point when I was recreating my website, I realized that, yeah, there were these different elements of the photographs, the handwritten stuff, the drawings, and that I could have them exist at the same time. But in terms of how, I mean, I think maybe when I was making that homepage too, I put up these like buttons, you know, that you can just like type, and it just felt weird to me. It just felt like my website was trying to be somebody else's website, get more mine. And so, also with the handwritten things, I think I wanted to find a way of creating content for my website easier, like not having to do a whole big production if I was creating something new or if I was going to create a product from some MP3s, instead of like, now I have to get the whole image to be exactly perfect and spend all this time. I could just like handwrite the title on a piece of paper and then that's it. You know, that there was
take a picture. Yeah.
And, and I just landed on, I just appreciate that combination of, I mean, I used the words and the writing out Feldenkrais' quotes for the book, this book. And so it has like quotes from his writing, and there's that video.
And then it goes to RuPaul's Drag Race.
That's funny.
And again,
so it just felt like natural, you know?
Yeah. And you, again, create this environment where everything feels immediate and playful and fresh and unlabored.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, it's amazing, right? How much work goes into making it look super simple. Many drafts, many tweaks.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Here I am talking about how easy and simple it is, but it is.
And you helped me, Amy. We worked on this together also. Does it not? Okay, there we go.
I'm trying to just get back into my window here. Okay. So I helped you, you were saying?
Yeah, you helped me like with some of the language and just like my, when I was working out some of those details, you were really helpful. And I think the thing that I've found really helpful with you is that you've really helped remind me, like, I'm coming from the perspective of being an artist, and that's the place that I come from. And I just appreciate that, appreciate that encouragement to stay in that place, come from that place. And
well, speaking of which, show us more of your art, because now I want you to show everybody your book.
Okay.
Work it is.
Yeah. So this is Feldenkrais Illustrated, The Art of Learning. And so it's quotes from Feldenkrais's books. I think 6 different books of his. It was a 10-year project. And I take... So I take his quotes and then I make images with them. And I started it as a way of, his writing is really dense. So I would be reading a paragraph and I was in my training and I would be like, whoa, like this is so rich and so dense. And so I made the images and wrote the words as like a way to just give some space for myself to even understand what he was talking about. And then when I showed them to people, they were like, you should make a book one day. That's, and this is so helpful. And so little by little, it was a long project.
Show us a couple more pages. Just give us a.
Okay. So this is, like, how do I read it? And so here.
I think I can read it. When we want to do something and find it difficult, there are always unwanted contradictions due to unrecognized. Am I getting it right?
Yeah.
Unrecognized motivation.
Unwanted contractions. due to unrecognized motivations we enact.
All right. And
actually,
these arms are amazing. This person's arms.
Actually, what's interesting is that the way the images in the book came in all different kinds of ways, but this particular image was like something that I had drawn years and years before. And when I was trying to draw an image for this quote, it was never quite right. But then I used and repurposed this old image, and put the words in it. Here you can see.
Oh yeah, the swimmers. That's so great.
Yeah, so it talks about if those whose attitude is I am no good, or it is difficult, or this needs training, or I am too old, etc., are invited to lift or bypass these parasitic motivations by maintaining only those directions that are necessary to the projected act. One could swim straight away if one could eliminate all the parasitic acts and perform only those movements that propel one in the direction wished. So there's a lot about like reducing what's unnecessary in order to just do what it is that you want.
Yeah.
So, and there's 25 chapters based on different themes in his work.
I can see why this thing took you 10 years. It's amazing.
Yeah. So then actually, once I had all these quotes, and then I was like, how am I going to organize them? Because they're kind of random, and how do they, so then I spent an entire year, because I drew them just randomly as I was reading. Okay, draw this quote, that quote. And then I was trying to organize them, and I was like, how do I do that? So then I took an entire year and combed through all the books I wanted to use, got all the quotes I could possibly want to use. There were like the ones highlighted that I had already drawn, and then ones that weren't drawn yet. And then used that, like edited the manuscript of like what is going to even be in the book. And then I went back and drew the ones I hadn't drawn yet. So it was like totally a different dimension to my spontaneous process. It was like, okay, if I'm going to finish, I'm going to do this. I need to like,
since I've worked with you, I've known you to be someone who does like, you know, new idea, new thing, do it. New idea, new thing, do it. New idea, new thing, do it. So it's really cool to hear more about that process. Okay, we're already at 4:35, but there's a question that I'm burning to ask you. Let's see if I can put it into words. So you were talking earlier about kind of how you came to change your self-image and to learn and to really kind of live your life more through your body. I don't think those are exactly your words, but how to just like arrive to your body and experience life there. And I think I'm not alone in this. I am so down with that idea as an idea, right? Who else out there in Facebook land is down with that as an idea? And you know, in my own kind of physical recovery from illness and various things, it's become clearer and clearer to me that my body has to come along with all the things that I'm doing, at least for starters, on the way to letting my, you know, all of my work really emerge from my body as source. And of course, all of our work always is emerging from our body as source, but to really, you know, live there. Embodiment is the project. And what I'm curious about is how that changes the creative process. And for you, you know, for one thing, were you making art before you started really going deeply into this learning of Feldenkrais? And maybe how did that process change? So that's one question. And the other question is, what just really simple, basic, concrete advice can you give people like me or other people in the audience about how we can actually create, whether it's art or business or anything we're doing and creating, in a way that's more coming from our physicality and not so much our mentality, you know? So start anywhere. Sorry for asking you two big questions at the same time, but I didn't want to forget them.
Because I had an answer to the first one. And I was like,
the first one was about you. Like, how did your relationship to your own creativity change when you started learning Feldenkrais?
So I did make art before Feldenkrais, and that was like what I was doing, partially as a living, partially as just my own, what I did. And Feldenkrais really helped me to be aware of how I was organizing myself when I was drawing. I remember one time, or making art, one time I came home from the training and I realized that I never look up, that I'm always like, and my self-image, I would say, is what before I did Feldenkrais was that I was a head, eyes, and hands, and maybe feet, and maybe a belly, but I didn't have any sense of the rest of me. And so I remember at some point putting like paper up high in my space to like try to draw up high. That didn't last very long, but at least I think I became less and less willing to compromise my comfort when I was doing creative work. So that is a big shift, and that not that I never, I'm just like, oh, I'm so into this thing on the computer. But I do a lot of like getting away from it, rolling around on the ground, or like counterbalancing this kind of attention, this like focus with other things, the practices, Feldenkrais and authentic movement, and other things to get some of like this plane of reality happening without it being like, now I'm going to exercise this thing, but more like have part of my experience of life include other things besides this kind of this stuff.
Everybody move. Anyone who's watching. Yeah. And would you say, so it sounds like it definitely had a major effect on your process of making, like what you're doing with your body and how it feels. Did it have any effect on the outcome, like on the style of drawing that you were doing, or the decisions you were making on the page?
Yeah, I think these little people, I think I have to look back, but I know they've been around for years. And I don't know if they were there before I did Feldenkrais. They may have been some hints of them, but they definitely came to life more. And I think there was some, when I started making art when I was a teenager, so much of it was just about like, and writing down the bones, Natalie Goldberg's just like, get it all out, just do it, just go for it. I think I have a lot of that, like create without necessarily an intention of what it's for or whatever. And then in college, there was all this, like, there's this bigger world, and I did a lot of like political art and like art that had a lot of meaning. And I think I was like a little bit, shifted into this place of like thinking about society and like abstract ideas that were not, that I was actually not can physically directly connected to, that there was this like, this is what's meaningful and it's out here. And I think that Feldenkrais and coming back more to myself and my own experience is that there's meaning and there's spontaneity and there is like an integration. Yeah.
And the second part of that question was, what can the rest of us do to bring our bodies to the party, for our own health and well-being, but, to really allow our bodies to do what they do, which is create, right? Like to get out of our own way, to show up more physically to the work we do, to show up as bodies to the creative process. What are some things we can do, whether we work in front of the computer or we make drawings or however we create?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is just, I think, having practices that support you to go inward and feel. So whether that's Feldenkrais authentic movement or your own practices, whatever it is that you do. There was a woman who was in my authentic movement class this morning who just had a baby and was talking about how when she's with her baby, all of her attention is on her baby. And it feels like such work to pay attention to herself. Like she was able to really feel herself when her baby was in the class and the baby was sleeping and the baby woke up, and she was like, immediately all of her attention was over there. And it felt like such work to try to pay attention to herself and the baby at the same time. And then she said, but then even just trying it for a minute and that practice of attending to her own experience and the baby at the same time, then she let go of it, and then it just came spontaneously, where she was able to hold both at the same time. And I think that's I'm really thinking a lot about practice and just having, a space, a time devoted to being in your kinesthetic experience without I was going to say without agenda, but sometimes it has an agenda, but just having time to be and to feel and to listen to yourself. And then I think the other thing I was thinking about is Feldenkrais has this idea about posture, which is not that it's a static uprightness, but that it's the ability to move in any direction without hesitation. So that instead of it being like, I am rigid like a post and now I have this good posture, but I actually can't move.
Right.
That from wherever you're at, and he coined this term acture, so that it's more about action, so that I could be able to, from here, I can turn and I could do anything that I want. And so in terms of, and that it's more about movement, being able to move in these different directions versus being stuck. And then when you can move, then you have choice to do what you want.
Right.
In terms of being on the computer, like one of the big things I'm like, when somebody sees me the first time, like, what's your computer setup like? It's really that whole thing about eye level, being able to feel like you can move. As soon as you look down, there's this, you have to contract somewhere in order so that your head doesn't fall off.
Right.
So to have your head over your spine and feel like you can attend to and have your feet on the ground. There's some, could go into it further, but I think just that idea of being able to move in any direction and when you're, not that you have to always be, like ready, but, Feldenkrais talked about it in terms of survival. If a tiger came in the room, could you turn and get out of the way, or would you first have to like get up and then,
Right.
But
two things that you said that blew my mind that feel really important are this piece about acture and the ability to move in any direction at any moment, to have freedom and flexibility and not be sort of limited, feels so important to the creative process, because that's the state of mind you want too. You don't want to be limited by the things you're supposed to do, the things you should do, by your own feelings about what's good, what's bad. You want to be able to just, like, when an impulse emerges, follow it without judgment. Another impulse emerges, follow it without judgment. I love that. And then the other thing you said that I'm definitely going to start using is this really simple invitation to imagine I can pay attention to my work or to my art or to my computer or to my child, to my project, whatever it is. I can simultaneously pay attention to that and pay attention to myself, even if just for one moment. And if we could start with one moment a day, that could probably start to happen a few times a day. And it seems like one of those simple paradigm shifts that could really change everything. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for those nuggets. Okay, so I want to show people the library and talk about exploring ease. The Movement and Creativity Library is something Tiffany's been developing that, to me, is a perfect example of how someone like some people build websites as designers, some people build websites as engineers, some people build websites as marketers, some people build websites as artists. And I love, and there's lots of overlap between all of those things. They're not really all that separate. But I'm going to show you the website that Tiffany's making for her new project, which is absolutely beautiful and such an incredible resource. You can describe it, Tiffany. But what I love so much about it is that it's organized. It's organized and designed in a really playful, poetic way, as well as useful and functional way. Okay, so let us screen share the website, and that can segue into talking about your new program, which is available for anyone to sign up to. Okay, let me make this full screen. Okay, so tell us about the Movement and Creativity Library. And y'all are getting a sneak peek because this thing is not live yet.
Yeah. So recently there was a New York Times article about the Feldenkrais method that actually filled up my private practice. There was a lot of interest from that article. It was written by Jane Brody in the Science column, and it was about how Feldenkrais was helpful with chronic pain. And so it was real, like, for me to realize that my practice was full was a whole process. That was, that eyes one is an example one. But if you go to, you'll just poke around, I guess. But some of them, like the eyes tag right now, it just is tagged to this thing called lesson. Go to like the under body, go to hips and
it just keeps jumping to body. Wait a minute.
If you just scroll over body and then don't click on body, but just scroll down.
It's not dropping down for me right now. Maybe if I'm not in full screen, it'll work. I wonder, oops, oh no. Okay, wait a minute here. This happened to me before when I tried to, okay.
It's in its little demo mode. Okay, so anyways, I had, my practice filled up and it was really hard for me to say no to people. And that's the whole thing that I had to work on. But I think what it did was like show me, okay, I have a limit to my capacity to see people individually. And so what am I going to do about it? And I'd had this idea for a while to bring together all the things I do into this library. And it just pushed me to make it. So basically, it's a library of a collection of over 100 Feldenkrais awareness through movement lessons, and also some creative practice resources that come out of my authentic movement and other kinds of creative process experiments and teaching. And so it'll be a catalog of all these audio recordings, and they're all tagged. So across the top, you see body, and if you scroll down to click on neck and shoulders,
good, it's working now.
Okay, good. Then you'll see a whole bunch of lessons that have, and these are duplicates, it's still in process, that have, and then click on hips and pelvis. So you can see this neck and shoulders. Yeah, there we go. And then when you are in this reaching and side sitting, for example, go back up. Then you can click on, I'm trying to point, but that doesn't help you. You can click on developmental, and that's underneath there, the tag. And then it'll pull up all the developmental lessons, or you'll see the sort of time frame it's in. You'll see what position it's in. And if you go across the top to positions, just scroll there. So on the back, on the belly, on the side, and sitting, hands and knees. And then patterns is flexion, extension, side bending, twisting, walking, breathing. There'll be a few others in there. And then process has to do with the lens through which you experience the lesson or what's highlighted in the lesson. So you could say many lessons are about posture, but these will be tagged with lessons that are specifically highlighting that, or developmental process, working the imagination, self-image, creativity, anxiety. So looking at, I've taught a series of classes focused on how Feldenkrais lessons help with anxiety. So you could find what you're looking for via the menus, but then also the tags in the lessons. And then the play, there's the different time sections. The play is more some of this other stuff I do online called Move, Create, Practice, which is influenced by authentic movement. And it's creating an open space to practice either your own movement practice or your creative practice, and this kind of support of community around that. And Move Your Project is the same thing, but like focused on working on a project. And then the weekly vision is a process I've developed and share here as well. So, and there's a search bar. You could search for things, and all the lessons are also on the right-hand side. So you could randomly find something you're looking for.
You can search by time. I only have 5 minutes. What can I do in 5 minutes?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then you'll see whether these are like this inner witness, mind, body, environment. This is from the creative process series. And then there's other ones that are just Feldenkrais. So I'm excited to have it all organized in one place.
An incredible resource. It's like an encyclopedia of beautiful things you can do with your body in whatever time period you have. I love it. You know, that you can search by position and pattern and process, like, and this is what I mean. It's a poetic exploration as well as a totally practical tool. Love it so much. So tell us about the program you have coming up, Exploring Ease, and then let's look and see if we have questions. And I should have stopped somewhere in the middle and reminded people to ask their questions. But if folks are watching and have questions, throw them in the comments now, and we will get to them very shortly. And should I click on Ease here, or is
there's nothing there yet. So this is that Ease button will be where the lessons from the series go this round. So I have, so it's a 3-month process. There's 8 classes that are taught in person in Somerville, Massachusetts, and then online. I teach the next day on Fridays, the same lesson, but broken up into smaller chunks. And then all of that is recorded, and you would get the downloads of all those recordings. And then there's this movement and creativity library, and you have access to that for 3 months. So there's a lot of kind of creating your own practice and your own exploration. There's the scaffolding of the Exploring Ease Feldenkrais series, but then you have access to this library. And what I'll do is a part of the courses, I'll say, okay, this lesson is related to these lessons, or somebody has a question about something, and then I can just point people to the library, which I'm super excited about.
And we've got one question that just came in is the site live now? When will it be live? When can we use it? So is it through your program specifically?
Yeah, it's through. So this is the first time I'm offering it, and I'm still in process with creating the library. It will be ready by February 1st, which is when the Exploring Ease series is ready and is happening. And so this first pass at the way I'm offering it right now is through this 3-month program, is that you get the Exploring Ease. You get the Movement and Creativity Library as a part of that. Afterwards, I may do some kind of monthly thing, but I haven't figured that out yet. But this is the first pass at the,
Yay, wonderful. Well, that was our only question.
Okay.
We had a quiet group tonight. So more questions are sure to come in as people catch this replay over the next couple of days. So if you're watching this as a replay, do put your questions in the comments, and Tiffany and I will check it out, and we will notice and come in and answer. And thank you so much, Tiffany. This is wonderful to have you here, and wonderful to hear a little more about what you do. And I'm really excited about the pieces that you offered us, both through just sharing your own story, through witnessing what you do, and also the really concrete advice you gave about like what it can look like to have a creative process that's rooted in the body, and what it can look like to learn and to change your self-image through letting the body lead. It's really beautiful. So
cool. Well, thanks, Amy.
yeah, thank you. And thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
All right. Bye everybody. Bye Tiffany.
Bye.